Now we come to the chub, which is one of our most interesting freshwater fish. It's ubiquitous and it'll eat almost anything, although in the summer at any rate it gets most of its food from eating ordinary plain silkweed. But it'll also eat anything it can get. It'll eat small fish, crayfish, caddis grubs, various types of water insects. In fact, there's almost nothing it won't eat, including a number of baits which can't be natural to it, like bread or cheese, things of that kind. And it likes nothing better on a nice summer's day than to find some insects floating down on the surface. The bigger the better, which is why I've tied this artificial bumblebee. You see it? And that, with ordinary fly fishing tackle of the sort you'd use for trout in the summer, is a deadly fly to catch chub with. It's a ubiquitous fish. You can catch it almost any way you like. You can ledger for it, you can float fish for it, you can fly fish for it, you can even spin for it. But there's one thing you always have to bear in mind when you're fishing for chub. Isaac Walton was wrong about a great number of things, but there was one thing he was absolutely right about, and that is when he said the chub is the fearfulest of fishes. It's the most easily scared of all the fish there are. In fact, sometimes we think they've got eyes in their tails. So this means that if you're fishing at close range, you've got to crawl about on your belly, and if there are cows in the field, that can sometimes be a little bit awkward. There's thistles and nettles to contend with, but you simply must not let the chub see you. Otherwise, it will take roughly half an hour to the pound for the chub to come unscared and give you another chance. The alternative is to fish at long range, preferably when the water is ruffled by wind, or possibly in summer in hot weather, in a jabble of current rushing over stones, and it's amazing how shallow water chub can live in. Well, now we're going to see real experts actually catching chub. But if this tape ran on for 3 weeks without stopping, you'd never see all the methods there are of catching them. Good viewing.
Beautiful day for chubbing. It's a bit bright, but fortunately the river's nicely coloured, and I think if these easterlies stay nice and quiet as they promised to do, we should have some good fishing. This is a lovely part of the Wensum here, between two bends. There's long straights and there's plenty of chub right in the middle of the river at this time of the year. I think what we're going to do is introduce some balls of mashed bread into the head of several runs. This has the effect of bringing any of the groups of chub, which are split up usually along the straights, up into the desired spot. I've got a pile of old bread scraps in the bag, and I usually dunk these in the landing net first and have a look at the river and see which type of swims I fancy fishing. As the water's still running a bit cold after the easterlies, I fancy quiver tipping. I bought both rods, but what I'm going to do is start quiver tipping with a static bait, bread flake, and I've got some cheese paste as well, and then we'll see how things go. Later on in the day, if the sun's warmed it up a little bit, I think we might try a bit of long trotting if the fish fancy a bait that's higher up in the water. Yes, I think I'm going to start here. This has always been a very good swim. Underneath that tree on the opposite bank there. Usually the chub hang around this eddy and just off that tree, and then once you've had a couple or so, they tend to move back down the straight. Sometimes, if the river's very heavy, full in spate, they'll be even under my own bank because there's another back eddy created. But I think today we'll stick with the main flow and start putting some mashed bread in. I've got a bag here of all the old bread scraps, which I soak in the landing net for a couple of minutes first while I put the rods up. That should be enough to start off with. Just sink that under the water to get that good and soaked. I'll leave that a second while I put the rod together. Now I always bring my rods completely packed up like this because a lot of my fishing is early in the morning before work, and sometimes I've only got 2 hours fishing. And with the hook and line, everything except the shot's already on. This is an ideal rod for this type of ledgering situation. It's 12 foot long, which allows me to sit well back from the water and to keep the rod well out so that the line doesn't get pushed in by the current. So it's 12 feet long, hollow fiberglass. It could be carbon if it was a more modern one, but it's a very fast taper so that it's very rigid, particularly in wind, whereas the little very sensitive quiver tip at the end, which is 20 inches of solid glass fired down to a very fine tip, gives the slightest bite registration. Right, I'm going to put some mashed bread in now. It's been in there a few minutes, that should be ideal. Now I like old bread for this. New bread gets into a mush, and what I do is squeeze all the water out of this and put it in little balls. And I'm going to toss this a fair way upstream. This is my simple paternoster ledger. There's a junction swivel there tied to the reel line at one end, 20 inches of 4-pound line, a size 10 hook, well sharpened, and on the lead link, which comes from the bottom of the swivel, we put on sufficient swan shots to hold bottom, which in this case I think we'll need 3 today. There we are, and on that goes a nice chunk of bread flake. Now I like my bread flake to be fairly soft on the hook, so I always put my finger over the point and only pinch the bread around the shank, which leaves the point completely exposed, but of course once that's been in the water for a few seconds, all the bread swells and it's a lovely carnation look over the hook, but you've still got the penetration of the hook instantly. And that lays on the bottom, something like that. Right. Very windy here, we're in a right facer now, but it's peculiar. Invariably in strong winds you tend to get much heftier bites, whether it's because the wind disturbance diffuses the light patterns on the water and the fish can't see you so easily, so they feel more confident, I don't know. But I think I had a little touch then. Whenever I've fished here before, they seem to occupy the centre channel because of the greater depth. But when the river's really pushing through, oh, that was definitely a touch then. I think we're gonna, here he goes. It's just, oh well. Right, here we go again. I just missed a very good bite then, probably talking too much, but I think we're going to catch fish fairly quickly here today. This sunlight's definitely making the move into the swim, and they've gone onto the mashed bread very, very quickly. I just had another little, here we go, I'm going to hit it any second. Now, here we go, yes, we're in. Oh, it's a good fish. Very good fish. Wow, it's really keeping this rod all the way down. I can't go too hard on it in this flow because there's quite a few knots, extra knots of water. Oh, it's really motoring now. It's taking a lot of line right the way downstream. This feels like a very good fish, so I'm going to have to be very, very careful with it. It's moving into the slack water along the bank now. It's coming up. Beautiful whine from the line off the wind there. It's really exciting stuff, this, but I have to be so careful because I'm only using a fairly small hook, and as I said, the current's very, very strong. Yes, it looks a good fish. It looks to be well over 4 pounds. These winter chub, they fight so differently from summer fish. They really do motor heavy. Oh, this is a good one. It's picked up quite a bit of weed as well in the fight. There we go. Oh, I've got him. Oh, it's a good fish. What a good fish start of the day. Oh, it's a beautiful fish. Yes, definitely the best side of 4 pounds. Bit long. Biggest one I've had out of this swim for a long time. What's the line? Looks as though he's pushing 5, this fish. Right, I think I'm going to weigh him straight away, see what he goes. £4 6 ounces, that's near enough. I would have thought putting that last cast a long way downstream would have brought a bite, but hello, there's a knot there. There it is. Oh, it's a good fish. I'm to pumping slowly upstream. These winter chub, they really use the current to the full. Well, this one's coming up fairly. Oh, he's a good one. Very good fish. Hold him well out in the current so he doesn't make any last minute things before I get the net under him. There he is. Oh, lovely. It's a good fish, about 3.5, I would think, something like that. Super. Some croak, full of mashed bread down his chops, neatly hooked in the side. There he is. And pop him in the net with the others. I'm going to put a little bit more mashed bread in. It was a bit quiet after that last spread of fish when I had 2 very quickly, but he should really be biting. I've put a bait this time quite a long way down, right at the head. Hello, here we are. It's a little knot then. Right, there it is. Oh, that's a good one. Goodness me, that's going. It's right down the bottom of the swim. Go. Line whining like hell there. Come on. It's a good fish. Slowly does it. There's such a lot of pressure against the line in this current. Oh, there you go. Oh, it's a very good fish. Just trying to get in under my own bank now. I shall keep that out because there's last year's rush stems right along my own bank. tiring now. It's lovely to see that big open mouth as a big chub comes towards the net. It's a good fish too. He's well over 4. There's a lot of weed on the line. Here we are. Carefully does it this last second. There he is. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, it's a lovely fish. Well over 4. By the look of him. Oh. Neatly hooked in the side of the mouth. Beautiful fish. Beautiful looking fish. He's got quite a lot of black spot on him actually. A lot of these when some fish have got the odd black spot on their scales. Alright, I'm going to pop him in the net with the others. Right, let's have this in, do a bit of trotting. Of course, with the trotting you can present the bait on the move and trundling along just above the bottom, which is sometimes how the chub want it. They don't always want it static. I'll take the front rest out and this one, because these tend to get in my way when I'm trotting. And I think I'll put a few more maggots in and then trot through with 3 maggots on the hook. Now the depth here is about 3.5 to 4 foot, so I'm going to try run through at about 3 foot to start off with, and then keep putting the float up every progressive trot until it drags bottom, and by then we should be at the right depth. I've got a 14 hook on and it's got 3 maggots. Take the check off the reel, and this is a simple 2 fingers in the line and just a careful underarm flick, which takes us right through to the middle of the swim. The beauty of trotting, long trotting like this, even on a windy day, it's such an enjoyable technique. It's not always as effective as ledgering, particularly as I say in this sort of wind, but it's so much more enjoyable when you get a fish from. No, I think that was the bottom. So much more enjoyable when you catch a fish long trotting. It's a simple flick in. I just had a quick glance at the maggot then to see there was no bottom weed on it, and through we go again. With a float taking 4 AA like this one, which is equivalent to 2 swan shot, the actual reel, once it gets going and held by the current, it actually pulls the centre pin along. And it's a beautiful way. Whenever I get a bite, I just put my finger on the reel and just strike. And it's a very positive way of fishing. Oh, yeah, we're in. Don't think it's a particularly big fish, but God, they do feel nice on this light gear at 35, 40 yards. It's thumping away there, and that as soon as it gets into the current, it starts to really thump quite heavily. Of course, trotting at this distance, you've got to be, with a smaller hook, you've got to be so careful against this current not to pull the hook out, particularly when it comes close in under the rod tip on a short line. No, it's not a monstrous fish. But there we are. Come on, my beauty. Come on. No, God. Last minute. Gotcha. There we are. This fish about 2.5, I would think, by the look of it. That's a nice fish. wall there. Even got our maggots back. Here we are. I always like to put them back at the end of the day and have a good look at them all. Ah, that was a nice fish. That one went hard. Ooh. There we are. Oh, this water's cold. Two more. The last one. Oh. Did you enjoy that? Good, so did I. Well, here we are with a lovely little Norfolk stream for a day's roaching. It's very fast below their bridge here when two rivers meet, and very shallow, more dacey. But for roach I like this top glide where it comes down from the main pool, meanders through these thick beds of sweet rush. It's a beautiful spot. Not very deep, perhaps 3-4 feet. It's a peculiar stretch this, because sometimes the roach tend to lay in the lay-bys further upstream on the left-hand bank, particularly in flood, and there's been some floods recently. There's debris, old logs, pieces of polystyrene littering all the beds of sweet rush on either side. And sometimes the roach will be in the centre channel. Sometimes I've even known them on my own bank, where it's very, very narrow, and I've caught them from much further upstream where the pool is. But I fancy under today's conditions, with the water being fairly clear, they'll probably be in the last 30 or 40 yards to where it shallows up and goes under the bridge where I'm standing. So I think I'm going to start off midway along the section and perhaps make a small move if I don't find them immediately. But basically I'm going to concentrate, I think, on the lower half. That's where I expect to find them. For most winter fishing here, I prefer long trotting. It's a nicer way of fishing than ledgering, although probably static fishing with the bait hard on the bottom like a big lump of bread flake would probably produce one of the largest roach that this little river has to hold. And in very cold conditions that's what I might do, but generally I like the roving game of trotting, and I shall be using centre pin reel, my favourite carbon rod, which is 13 foot, a line of about 2 pound breaking strain, smallish hook, and I shall be long trotting maggots and casters right through the centre of the little river. This is the tackle I'm using today, my 20-year-old centre pin. Float's a very simple length of peacock quill, red at the top. The shotting pattern, one tiny little shot fixed very hard on the line, not so as to break it, but to keep the float fairly rigid so it doesn't slip whenever I strike. The bulk shot about a foot below it. A very small shot, about 12 to 16 inches from the hook. I prefer these types of floats for fishing these little streams, although I could use something bigger if there was more flow. I would perhaps put a 3 swan shot Avon type float. Now, I've even used much bigger jobs for when the water's really moving, but it's not that fast today, and so I think I'm going to concentrate on this small piece of peacock quill. It really does pay to be quiet when you're visiting these little tiny streams. I'm trying to keep back as far as I can from the river on the other side of this wire fence, and I'm going to go well above the swim and then walk back down to where I intend to fish. Fortunately there's a spot up here where the farmers put some old polythene bags and wrapped it around the wire, and it's a good spot to get over. The day's fishing can be ruined or made. A quick march up to the river now and a basket plonked heavily down, and the day's fishing's messed up. Most of the fish tend to congregate in the lower half of this, so I'm going to take up a position about 50 yards above the end of the glide, so I can trot nicely down. This spot here is absolutely ideal. Keeping as low as I can here. There it goes down. First thing I'm going to do is put up my stall and sit as comfortably as I can. Long trotting all day long, holding the rod, is probably one of the most demanding methods of fishing you could possibly ever meet. And that's fine. I've already made the rod up back at the car. Everything's around me. There's no clunking around with rod holdalls or undoing net bags, etc. Undo the maggots and we'll put a few in. See what we've got here. Some of these are quite old in some of these boxes. Anyway, I've got a nice tin of fresh maggots there. And I've also got some old ones with some casters starting to turn. I'm going to start off by putting a few into the middle of the river at my feet, because it's very, very deep, quite close in here, and fairly fast, and so they'll all get washed downstream. Right, let's try and run through for depth and see what it's like. I've set this at about, well, I don't know, about 3.5, 4 feet. I always start off fairly shallow because I don't want to catch bottom on the first run through. I'll try a couple of maggots anyway. It's the eternal optimist in me, you never know. Got a small hook on. There we are, just a gentle lob out and away she goes. Well, I think I've guessed those shots just about right. I've got about 1/4 of an inch of the float showing, which to a lot of match anglers would probably seem more than enough. But I'm looking at this float at 30 yards and I'm going to be doing it for most of the day, and so therefore I don't want to be squinting after a couple of hours. Apart from that, as I've been painstaking in ensuring that the roach aren't wary of me on my arrival, what I hope to do is encourage them to bite quite strongly anyway. It's going down nicely there. I haven't caught bottom soon, so on the next cast, what I'll probably do is increase the depth a little, I think. Often in this spot I've caught a very big roach on the very first trot through. Oh look, there's one. Oh, goodness me. Oh, goodness me. Talk something up. It's trying to get into those rushes further downstream. This is where the 13-foot rod comes in very, very useful. Oh, dear me. It's come off. Oh, well, never mind. So it goes. The current isn't that strong today. It's not really pulling line from the centre pin how I like it. So every now and again I have to give it a little help. At this spot we should start hopefully getting a few bites. It's coming into danger country now. I'll just hold back to straighten the line. It's bent a little bit off course there. Oh, yes, here we are. Oh, this is a good fish. Goodness me, right at the end of the trot down there. I'm going to have to hold this out because it's whining like a maniac because it's coming into my own bank. Here it is. Oh, perhaps it isn't as good as I first thought. It just felt very, very heavy. I brought that upstream now. Oh, it's a nice roach. I'll hold it well out. I don't want to splash and clonk it around too much. What I'll try and do is net it even upstream, well away from the rest. This is why the long handle landing net comes in useful. It's a lovely fish. Here it comes. Actually, it isn't a roach, it's a rudd. Would you believe? Well, I never did. That's the first time I've caught a rudd here. There we are, it's about 3/4 pound. Very pretty fish. It's just inside its lip there. We'll pop him in the keep net and make sure the keep net's properly placed before we do anything else. Right, I've got the keep net nicely settled. It's a bit difficult getting it through those beds of sweet rush there. Out we go again. Now the shoal does tend to keep usually in the middle of the channel, although it's quite deep along the edges, and sometimes in clear conditions or when it's very bright, the roach actually keep underneath and you have to trot right alongside them, which is very difficult. But today I think they're going to be going down the middle of the channel here, and it's not easy to concentrate on keeping it there and keeping the line fairly straight. Every now and again I just hold back on the float to swing the maggot off the bottom. The flow really is quite slow. Normally I'm using a 2-swan float here and a little rattle line off the reel, but I'm having to help this as this trot. Here we are, into another fish. It's another good fish. Heading off downstream now. It's coming up against my own bank. This feels very nice indeed. I'm going to have to be very careful with this. It's trying to get underneath my own back. Hold the rod out as far as I can. Oh dear. Oh, it's come out. I thought it was in the rushes then. Here we are. I'm trying not to let it swirl on. Oh, goodness me, that's a good roach. I don't want that to swirl on the surface and frighten the others. Ooh. Oh, it's just missed the rushes that side. Goodness me. I daren't pull too hard because it's going to rip the hook out. This is a lovely looking fish. There he goes again. There we are. I'm just going to gently get the net in position so there's no last minute stabs at it. Here it comes. Oh, what a beautiful fish. Oh, dear me. Oh, that's a beauty. Oh, that's over 1.5 pounds. That's a lovely fish. Oh, what a beautiful roach. It's neatly hooked in the top lip. It's a wonder the hook ever comes out. They're so well in at times. That's a beautiful fish. I think that's getting on for £2. Beautiful fat fish. It's most unusual really. It's completely covered in black spot, which is a parasite affecting the scales, but it never seems to affect the rest of the fish. It almost looks like a separate species. I think it's quite delightful. Beautiful fish.
Hello, we're going to talk about pike. Pike are predators and they're scavengers too, and they're very well equipped indeed for both jobs. They'll eat practically anything, dead or alive, that will give them some nutriment. They'll eat other fish, they'll eat waterfowl, they'll eat anything they find dead lying on the bottom or floating on the top. They'll eat swimming rats, both water rats and land rats. In fact, there's practically nothing they won't eat. Normally, they try and ambush their prey. But as they get older and bigger, they're more inclined to go for bigger prey, and if they can, disabled prey or even dead fish. Now, here you can see what I've been talking about. This is the head of a stuffed pike caught in Ireland that weighed 43 pounds. And look at its teeth. In the lower jaw, fangs like a dog, and very sharp indeed. Never put your hand in a pike's mouth. You see the teeth? And in the roof of the mouth, can you see that? You've got a multitude of teeth, hundreds of them, pointing down the pike's throat. So once those jaws have closed on anything, it has a very, very poor chance of ever getting free. Occasionally a fish does get free. We sometimes catch a fish that shows scars from having been bitten by a pike, but not very often, I'm afraid. Not many fish, once they're clamped in those jaws, can escape. That is really a formidable argument. The point I want to make about it, apart from how good it is at catching things, is that it's not very easy for an angler to find a place for a hook to penetrate these bony jaws and this multitude of teeth. And this is why, almost alone amongst the fish that we anglers try to catch, possibly apart from the salmon, we do use, most of the time, multiple hooks instead of single ones. Now we're going to see some pike actually being caught.
Well, there we are. We're just coming to the end of Rockland Dyke now, and when we get around the bend, the full force of this nor'easter's going to hit us. It's quite a windy, cold day, but really, I suppose for February it's not too bad. It's a very bleak, typical Broadland look about it. All the Phragmites along the edge, the common Norfolk reed, they're all brown, pale brown. In the next couple of months they're going to rot away to leaf mould. Very tall reeds along this part of the dyke. Used to be good fishing right in the neck here, but these days we go to a spot right over on the other side of the Broad. Oh, I'm feeling the wind around my neck now. Still, this is what winter piking's all about. That's a lovely sight. I love this Broad. Now I'm going to head up into the boat channel towards the pike spot. So far, it looks a very pikey morning. Goodness me, there's thousands of gulls over there. A lot of different birds on this Broad. Well, good, we're on the ledge. Now the front anchor is in about 3 feet of water. I'll reposition this on the knot. Couple of non-descriptive knots. Again, I like to be very quiet in my movements. All this clonking about on the floorboards doesn't do any good at all. Now I'm in due lee now, that's beautiful. Put this one down. Now this one will probably be that much deeper. No, I'm still just on the edge of the ledge. Good. Now just out in front here, about another 2 or 3 yards, it goes down to 10 feet. That's perfect. Right. Stash the oars quietly. Let's get a couple of baits out. I don't use live baits, large live baits these days. I like small ones, and I just hook them once only with the one remaining barb on the hook through the top lip. Just like that, so that's quite sufficient. I don't lose too many fish like it, and if I do, I don't really mind anyway. Right, let's put that out a good cast. And that'll work round with the wind nicely. Right, I'll straighten that line up. I'm going to have a cup of coffee. There's not too much of a wind blowing, but it's a bit nippy around the back of my head. Have something to eat as well. Right, I've got both baits out now. They've both worked all the way downwind. I hope I'm not going to get a grebe any minute, because it's obviously after some small fish which are lying in the same area, so I think there's some pike about. And every now and again he makes a bit of a dive. I think I've only ever had one bait grabbed by a grebe, and the rod nearly flew out of the boat and the line whistled along as though it'd been connected to a runaway lorry. Unfortunately, it dropped it. I thought I got a real big one. Oh, the wind's getting up a bit now and gusting. That's good, because that'll activate the baits a little bit more. Hello. I think I've got a run on that one right now. Just going to feel. Yeah, there he is. Right. I may be risking losing it, but I'm going to hit it straight away. Hard tie down and a strong strike, and there he is, he's there. Oh, a small one, I think, by the feel of it. Yeah, small fish. Puts a lovely bend in this rod. That's why I like using them. It's super. Makes you feel you've got a monster. I like to be realistic with my pike fishing. Most of the fish I get are small, so I might as well enjoy them. What's going down now? It's going around nicely. It's coming around the front. Oh. The worst thing with these light gear is you haven't got a lot of leeway to stop them going under the anchor, so I have to be fairly careful. Oh, come on, baby. There he is. Oh, it's a small fish. Right. I'm going to unhook him in the water because the treble's just in the scissors. It's not a big fish, so that there's no point in me bringing him in and weighing him unnecessarily. So I'll bring him to the side of the boat and hold the trace in my hands, and then unhook him with the forceps and just neatly put the treble out. If I'm very quiet in what I do, he might even shake himself off. No, he's not. Fish of about 6 pounds. If I just hold the treble gently, and there he is. Well, that was a nice fight from such a little fish. Right, I think it's worth putting another bait out there again. It's getting decidedly nippy now. I think this wind's turned around a little bit. Oh, there's nothing wrong with a wee drum on a day like this. Actually, live baiting is probably one of the most exciting methods of piking, because all the time the bait's down there vibrating, working, encouraging the pike to come along. It's perhaps not the most active in terms of reel manipulation, spinning and wobbling, dead baiting, etc., and methods that you're continually working the reel. But there's some sort of aggression within it. Probably brings out the hunting instinct in man that we've all got. Anglers take it out on fish. People who don't go fishing and have no other interest perhaps take it out on old ladies. But there's an aggression within us that has to come out, and I feel it's this hunting thing that's in fishing that makes live baiting okay for me. Some people put it into a controversial part of their sport, but I don't look at it like that. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I thought I just had a take on that one, but hello, I'm away again. Before I strike, I like to feel that clonk of it shaking its head when it might be turning the bait. This one's doing nothing. It's coming towards me slowly. Could be a paper bag. Let's wind down anyway. Yes, that's a good one. Away we go. It's a very, very slow take then. It's almost as though it caught on a piece of cabbage. Just move this other rod out of the way. They're all about the same size today. Small. The fifth hook, fishing the scissors, would you believe it? Goodness me, I can't remember a day when they were taking so delicately as today. It's most peculiar. Now, which one? This one is just inside the jaws. We put a glove on and unhook him. Now, at this point, some people put their hands into the scissors underneath the jaw there, but I'm a little bit wary because if the hook's just inside, I'm liable to get caught up, and I work with my hands. And they're more valuable to me than this pike, although I try to take as much care with this fish as I can. It's just inside the... There we are. And we've got some more. There's another leech. This time of the year when the fish spend a lot of time on the bottom when it's very cold, there's thousands of those leeches on them. They've got a sucker on either end. There we are. Let's pop him back to become a bigger one, hopefully. Well, I've given live baiting a good old go now for several hours, and I'm going to have a go with dead baiting. I've just made up a couple of rods, one with half an eel on, and I'm going to put that out right out of my way into the deeper water and put the line in an elastic band so that I can see if I get a run. And with the other one, I'm going to cover the same area that I've worked with the live baits, but with a small dead roach. And with that, I've got 4 swan shots, keeping it down close to the bottom where the pike are, but so that I can retrieve it fairly fast. Retrieving slow sometimes brings a few follows, but they just don't want to take. Right, this is one of my standard 2-hook dead baiting rigs, 2 size 8 trebles on the trace, and I'm going to use a half an eel. This is one of my favourite baits. They're a supernatural bait that not many anglers bother to collect during the summer months like I do and freeze down for use in the winter. And I put the trebles fairly well up the trace so that even if the pike does swallow a lot of it, you've still only got 1 treble at the back of the mouth. There we are. That's super. I've caught a lot of fish on this particular very effective natural bait. And that one's going right out of my way over there. And I'm going to tighten up to it, open the bail arm, and just clip the line in an elastic band. Whilst I'm working the other rod, I can keep looking at that loop, and when that goes, I'm in business. Right. Wobbling does tend to kink up traces. I'm going to have to make sure I keep checking this, because one little kink in the braided elasticum will render it useless. Now I've set the clutch here so that one sudden take won't break the line, but I can strike with a good chance of setting the hooks on impact. In this case, I don't wait for a run. I just simply keep twitching it. Now I've got the swan shots just in front of it, and I expect the take on this to come fairly close to the bottom, and I shall strike immediately. There's no chance in this instance of letting the pike run with it, because they'll feel the swan shot. And what I try and do with the wobbled dead bait is keep jarring the rod tip so that the bait goes up and down, and when I stop winding, the swan shots plummet it down to the bottom, and then when I pull again, of course up it comes. It's the most erratic, looks like a wounded fish to a pike, and sometimes you get the most savage takes. They really pull the rod. I think I'm going to go back to live baiting again. Quite a few casts with one trace. Every time the bait hits the water, the trace gets a little bit over stretched, and it's silly to keep a straight on a cast on too long. Oh yeah. Well, I'll just put this rod together again, and I think we'll move then right over to the middle of the hole and stay with the wind, but move about 20, 30 yards perhaps downwind. Well, I've only been in this new spot about 3 minutes, and one of the live baits is already away. It was a wise move switching back from dead baiting. Here we go, and he's on. Yep. It's keeping deep and it's going upwind. Feels a marginally better fish, although you never can tell. It's keeping quite deep, putting a good bend in the rod. Sometimes it's only a... Yes, it isn't that big. There it comes. It's better than the other little ones, though. Oh, yes. Come on, baby. It's about 12, 13 pounds. Ah, got him. God, dear me. Nearly did a swimmer's roll out of the net. And I think it's only just hooked anyway. That's a nice looking fish. Right. Let's have a quick check of the other rod before I do anything else. Yeah, that's all right. I'll leave that bail arm open. Right. Rather handy if I could unhook him in the net without... Oh, it's actually spat the hook out in the net, would you believe it? That saved us a lot of trouble. They are very lightly hooked, these fish today. I think that's why I've pulled out the 3 or 4. I don't know why. Perhaps it's the sudden chill of this wind that makes them a little bit finicky. I don't know. Let's have a look at him. Oh, that's a nice looking fish. It's quite deep. Oh, that's a lovely looking fish. Cool. Fat as butter. Look at him. Oh, it's a nice young female by the look of her. This is where it's wise to keep this foam on the bottom so they don't knock themselves on the bottom of the boat. Oh, dear me. There she is. Oh. It's a nice looking fish. That's a nice end to the day. Probably about 12, 13 pounds. Lovely looking fat female. There you go. Oh, soak me. Oh. Absolute magic.